Well, welcome everyone. Welcome Bob, welcome Rita. I want to just before we get underway, I want to introduce you to our wonderful community here at Mind Body Training Institute and let everyone know about our webinar today. This is a Gestalt approach to addressing difference in couples therapy, and the title of this webinar is To Become One and Then There Are None. And I think as Bob and Rita speak to you today, you're going to understand the relevance of that title. But if you're not familiar with Bob and Rita Resnick, they are the founders of Gestalt Associates Training Los Angeles. Rita is the faculty chair there, the faculty chair of the European Summer Residential Training Program since 1991. And in addition to her private practice in California, Rita trains psychotherapists in the US, Australia, Europe, South America, basically across the world. I've seen Bob and Rita live. I've spoken to them online before, so I'm very excited about today's presentation. And Bob is a clinical psychologist, a Gestalt couples therapist trainer, and he was actually certified and trained by Fritz Perls and Jim Simkin in 1969. I think that might be revealing your age a little bit there, Bob. He was chosen by Perls to introduce Gestalt therapy to Europe that summer in '69, and he has spent 16 to 18 weeks annually training internationally for the past 50 years. That's just an extraordinary amount of time and that's an extraordinary amount of commitment as well, 50 years. Have you never missed a year?
No. I've missed 1 year of our summer program, which has gone on for 48 years, but I have never missed a year in Europe. Or somewhere in the world.
Until COVID.
Which goes to prove I'm old.
Yes, yes. And we do like to say that the Resnicks are frequently happily married. So let's move into our discussion today. As I said, this is about a Gestalt approach to addressing difference in couples therapy. And Bob and Rita are going to be talking about their connection model of relationships. It really centers on the crux of most couples issues, which primarily focuses on how couples deal with difference rather than what the differences are. And this is really a collaborative model for engaging and dealing with difference that can only happen when the differences in each individual in the couple are allowed to stand. And they say this is only possible when there is safety, equal rights, power, and parity. So the way we'd like to structure today is I'm going to hand it over to you, and Bob and Rita, I'll hand it over to you to speak for a while. I may have some questions and jump in while you're talking. And then we're going to have time at the end for our attendees to ask you questions. So if you do have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A feature on the webinar. That just allows us to easily collate the questions. And if you want to chat with each other, you can do that in the chat. So welcome, Bob and Rita, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to go relatively quickly with just a few but important points to us. First of all, we approach couples therapy from a very different paradigm than any other model that I'm aware of in the literature or clinically. Every model of couples therapy that I know works within the model of coupling, relationships, and marriage that exists in the culture. Coming from a Gestalt perspective, one of the dimensions and lenses that we use is field theory, meaning we're looking at the context and the history of the field, not just the current field, but the history of the field. And the model of marriage, which is clearly the two become one, which is a fusion model. As recently as 4,000 years ago, the Old Testament says in Genesis, "Ye shall leave your mother and father and cleave to one another and become one flesh." That wasn't new. That had already been in the culture for tens of thousands of years, because way back when, 30,000, 40,000 years ago, according to anthropologists and sociologists, that's how human beings survived. They did what they needed to do in order to survive as individuals and to survive as a species. You may have noticed our species takes a long time before they can stand on their own. And if you're parents and you think you're done by 18, forget it, you're not. So we're working with a model of marriage. It's like the Zen saying that I don't know who it is that discovered water, but I'm sure it wasn't a fish. Because we are so immersed in the model that there's another one of those that I love. It's from string theory. If you're a microbe on a stop sign, you think the whole world is red. Because there is no difference. You can't have awareness without difference. You can't have contact without difference. Difference is central, and unfortunately has a bad reputation in Western culture. It's equated with conflict or betrayal or some kind of danger, criticalness, etc. The fusion model of marriage is the idea that we come together and become one. In fact, till death do us part. Well, up to about 100 years ago, the average marriage in the United States only lasted 7 years. And there was no substantial amount of divorce because women didn't have, in a patriarchal society, women didn't have many opportunities for education or for learning a trade or for inheriting property. So that women, the best thing you could do would be to get a husband, almost any husband. That was a way to survive. So with almost no divorce, only 7 years. Where that comes from is there were no antibiotics until 1907. The figures I'm talking about are around 1898. So women would die in childbirth because of systemic infection. There was no way to cure systemic infection until the early 1900s. So till death do us part was a cheap shot. 7 years is not that bad. But now relationships and marriages can last 10, 20, 40, 60, 70 years. They weren't designed for that. They were designed to fuse in the service of being able to survive. Survival comes first. That's the biological imperative. The way that model functions today, all you have to do is look around. On the surface, you see 55%, más o menos, of first marriages end up in rupture and divorce. The texts and the literature will have you assume, oh, therefore 45% are successful marriages. Wrong. 45% stay together. Whether they're mutually nourishing is a totally different story. And when you check carefully, you find out of that 45%, a substantial number of them are staying because they're terrified to be alone, because of money, because of religion, because of cultural stigma, because of the children. Lots of reasons to stay that have nothing to do with why they married the person in the first place that was nourishing. So we call that part of the population the secretly miserably married. So you either get a rupture and an explosion and divorce, or you get an implosion to the secretly miserably married. Yes, dear, quiet, depressed, sometimes alcoholic, drugs, not good stuff. If you ask people confidentiality in that secretly miserably married group, would you do it again? They look at you like you're nuts and they roll their eyes. So we were looking for a way, and we've been developing this for 50 years, for a way to sustain long-term relationships, because there's a value in a long-term relationship of building a shared history, a shared ground that you can't have in sequential relationships. You can get other good things from that. It's not that it's not valuable, but if you want a shared ground of sadness and joy and accomplishment and yearning, then it needs to be long-term. And what we came up with is the fusion model makes people confluent, and the nemesis of confluence is difference. If you have any difference, you begin to break the confluence, not into conflict, just into difference. That's a no-no in the fusion model of marriage. The fusion model of marriage pushes on the we of it. And Rita and I have always been of the position of there's this person, and then there's the relationship. So if it's a candle ceremony at a marriage, we love 3 candles. One for me, one for you, and one for us. But we don't give up our own one in the service of fusion, which is when that 2 become 1, and then there are none. The actual couples therapy has 2 components in it. One component has to do with the major component in our view, that as Clinton referred to earlier, that most couples issues have to do with how they deal with difference. Because in a fusion model, you're not allowed to have a difference. You either have to defer to the other, and then you lose yourself, or you have to go away, and then you lose the other, or you have to turn difference into conflict, which is what most couples do. And how difference becomes conflict is when you try to get rid of difference by making the other like you. That's the beginning of conflict. Because when you do that, the other digs in and resists and pushes back, and it escalates to an explosion, a pop, and then a withdrawal. So that conflict is the only way out in a fusion model of marriage if you don't go along with deferring, yes, dear, or I'm out of here, and just leaving the scene. I don't mean breaking up the relationship, but leaving the encounter. There's no room to engage the difference because the difference isn't allowed to stand. Conflict is the attempt to get rid of difference. Otherwise, it's just difference, and can be very interesting, can be exciting, can be fun, can be a pain in the ass sometimes, but it's not essentially conflict until you try to get rid of the difference by changing the other person. That's the same thing at any level of organization, including geopolitical. It's called war. When my country tries to change your country to make your political system like mine, or your social system like mine, or your religious system like mine, and you resist, that's when we go to war. Otherwise, we just have different systems, and we can engage from our different points. The connection model allows for space and movement. There is no movement allowed in a fusion model. So when working with couples, we're working both with the model that they are implicitly following, and we're working, of course, with the characterological issues that each of those people brings to the meeting. It's not that we can attribute everything to the model of marriage, of course not. But a lot of the difficulties within a relationship, whether it's a marriage or not, but a long-term primary relationship, a lot of the difficulties come from the difficulties in dealing with difference, that you don't have the option in a fusion model to collaboratively deal with difference because differences are bad, scary, dangerous in the first place. So I could go on, but I don't want to. Rita's going to say something now about what a connection model adds to a relationship. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say. Connection is more than contact. Contact is when one person touches the other, each from their primary experience. I'm not talking about just conversation, but real contact. Connection is much more than that. Connection is contact, and it's also withdrawal. Contact and withdrawal. And the movement in between. Movement's not allowed in a fusion model. In a connection model, connection is built with contact and withdrawal and the movement back and forth. Both of those are healthy. Rita?
I want to talk a little bit about the circle of relating. This is a tool that we use to look at most couples to see where each individual is in relating to the other person. Our belief is that with a fusion model, you only have the option of confluence. And confluence is a place where two people, like if you run a muddy river and a clear river together, you no longer see both rivers. You only see one thing, which is what happens with people. There's no boundary between them. They just become one. But in a connection model, you have many of these other, we just arbitrarily pick some places on the circle to talk about that are usual places that people land and sometimes get stuck. But let me go through them all, and maybe that would help you to see more of what we're talking about. Isolation, I put on the outside of the circle, which is really because it doesn't happen that often. But isolation is really where, like in Viktor Frankl, when he was dealing with concentration camp victims, this was a way that people thickened the wall so that nothing toxic from the outside came in and nothing from the inside went out. It was a way of walling yourself off. So we do see some members of the couple that are isolated, but not too many. More frequently, we see people that are in withdrawal. And withdrawal, I drew those lines from the circle indicating that people could get in and out easily. It's a way of going in and nourishing yourself and then being able to come out. And it's in a rhythm with contact, just as sleeping and wakefulness are in a rhythm. One is not any better than the quality of one is not any better than the quality of the other. Okay, so withdrawal is healthy and a good place, and we all need it. We don't necessarily all have the same rhythms of withdrawal and contact. Some people need much more withdrawal and other people need much more contact. But we all have a rhythm that works for us. We need to honor that rhythm and find somebody whose rhythm is similar enough that they're not always pulling on us or telling us to shut up. Okay, then let me go to contact. Contact has to do with three issues. Contact is really the touching of the other. And it has to do with there must be movement, because if I just stare into one of your eyes and I don't move, what I get is either I go into confluence or I go into isolation. So I need to be able to move to keep the contact going. I must have an awareness that there are differences between us in order to be contactful. And I must be willing to express my primary experience of the moment, whatever that is. So if I don't do that, then I sort of turn to the side and I can be conversational. But if I really want to be contactful, I have to share what's primary for me in that given moment. Okay, and the last place on the circle is intimacy. And intimacy is an additional component really of contact. It is a non-monitoring of myself or the other when I'm in relationship with you, so that I can say whatever I want to say without having to think about, is this okay to say? Are you going to get angry? Are you going to get mad? But I know you well enough to know that I can say whatever I want to say whenever I want to say it without your getting upset about it. Or if you get upset, that I know that it will be repaired. It won't be something that will be between us forever, a problem forever. So what's really good about this is that we can track movement around the circle in a clockwise fashion and maybe counterclockwise fashion. If somebody gets stuck somewhere, that's the problem. It's not that any place is particularly difficult. It's that if you don't want to get stuck there, it's like New York. You don't want to get stuck in New York. You want to be able to visit and then you want to be able to go home. Sorry if there's any New Yorkers listening. Yeah. But it's a place to visit. All of these are healthy places as long as they're done with awareness. And the other thing I wanted to say about this is that we all have both sides of this continuum in our heads. We have issues about contact and we have issues about withdrawal. We have issues about isolation and we have issues about confluence. We are more, usually women are more toward the confluence side and men are usually more toward the isolation side, but not always. This is with a bit of poetic license. So where I am on this continuum will very much depend upon who my partner is. If I'm somebody that pushes for contact all the time, then if I have a partner who wants more contact than I do, then I'm the one who pulls more toward isolation. Or if I have a partner who's more isolated or more contactless, than I am, wants less contact than I do. And then I push for more confluence and more connection. So we all have both, but it depends on who our partners are as to which way we go. I think I said everything I need to say for now. Thank you.
Let me just add, it's also what Rita was talking about, but somebody asked, I noticed the question about when is confluence good? All of those places are good. What's not good is either getting stuck in any one of them, or what's not good is jumping into one of them without enough support. It doesn't fit the situation. Confluence is beautiful when you're making love. Confluence is beautiful when you're laughing your heads off or crying together. Confluence is a beautiful, luscious, delicious kind of place to allow yourself to be drenched, as long as you don't get incarcerated there, that you have to be there. But that would be the same about contact. Can you imagine having constant contact? It would drive you crazy.
Would drive me crazy.
Similarly with intimacy or withdrawal, any one of them, it's the fluidity of movement of each person's self-support. Because for us, the basic human dilemma from birth till death is how to be with an other and maintain a self. It's a balance, which balance requires movement. There's no such thing as balance without movement. That's pure physics. You will never see a trapeze artist standing still on a high wire. Never. If they stand still, they fall. Balance is movement. So the movement among all of those places, they are all good. What's not good is either getting stuck, holding back, or jumping too soon. So you can say things to your partner that if you say to a stranger, they'll call the police on you because you don't have the support to do that. The example I typically use is if you're sitting in the movie with your partner and you're bored with the movie and you say to your partner, want to go home and have some sex and play around? Your partner will say either, oh, shut up, I'm watching the movie, or I thought you'd never ask, or no way, I'm angry at you. But if you turn to the person to your right, the stranger, and want to go home and have some sex, they're going to get scared and angry. Scared because you don't have a relationship with that person that can support the question, much less the answer. So those places are all good, depending on the situation, depending on the amount of support you have for movement forward and movement back. That might be a good place to stop and open up to questions.
Questions, yes. Thanks, Bob. And just a reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A feature, not the chat. It's very hard for us to monitor questions in the chat when there's so many comments going on. Alan's asking, so is your model a collaborative model versus a compromise model?
Compromise is one way to collaborate. Sometimes you can make a trade, like who hasn't played Monopoly? I'll do this for you if you do this, but it's an open trade, it's a deal. Sometimes we can find something that will work for both of us that neither of us thought of. When I find out, how is it you want to go skiing for that weekend? What's so important to you about that? And you share, I love the excitement, I love the danger, I love the wind in my face. And what is it that you want to go to a beach in Mexico? I love to lie by the pool and drenched in the sun and have a lazy day and read my book. Oh, there's a resort in Mexico that specializes in extreme sports. They have skydiving, they pull you on a kite in the back of a speedboat. You get the wind in your face, and so sometimes you can come up with something that works for both of you, that both of you get what's important to you about it. Or, okay, I'll go to this time to the ski and I'll sit in the lodge with my good book near the fireplace, not bad. And Next time you come with me, and while I'm at the pool, you can be flying around in the air in some kite if that's what you want to do. And sometimes there isn't something that works for both of us. But being collaborative means both of us have equal weight in having our needs honored. And we can sometimes commiserate that there is no good answer that works for both of us. So compromise would be one way, but it's not the only way of collaborating.
Great. Someone was clarifying, Bob, you said 45% of couples stay together. And what percentage did you say was secretly miserable?
I didn't say a statistic. I don't know of any hard data on that. As I said, 50 years I've been specializing in couples, and I would estimate of that 45%, at least half of them are the secretly miserably married. And I'm being kind of conservative. I actually think it's higher, like, I don't know, 70, 80% of that 45%. But settle for half. If it's only half, you've got 55 plus 22. You're now close to 80%. That should be pretty clear. There's something wrong with the model, or we are all really sick.
Do you use the terms intimacy and connection interchangeably, or does connection refer to the whole dance in and out of these different states?
The latter. Intimacy is, intimacy is not always soft and warm. You can have an intimate fight. Intimacy has to do with that you know this person well enough that you don't have to watch and be careful. That you have a mat, when you do have a difficulty, you have a mat to fight on. Connection is it's the relationship. It's over time. It's that we carry each other around in our consciousness. We carry out, even if we're not thinking, you're in there, you're in the back burner when I'm doing something else. I have a concern and a regard and a caring about you.
Carl's asking, can there be with a couple the experience of an intimate and enlightened confluence in awareness?
Yes, you can have an enlightened confluence as long as you're aware that you're in it. You just don't want to get stuck there without having that awareness that you're there. And then all of a sudden you're there and what am I doing here with this person? You know, so yes, I would say yes, you can have both.
Yeah. I have some difficulty with the question because it seems to have an underbelly that usually confluence is bad. Is it possible to have a good confluence? And it's not bad. Getting stuck is bad. It's never bad if you're not stuck.
And if you're aware that you're there.
Right.
Rudy's asking, does looking at the differences of attachment style help in the type of intervention and connection approach?
You want to start, Rita, or you want me to?
You too.
I've been around long enough that I was around for the first wave in the mid-60s of the attachment, Bowlby, etc. And then it went fallow for several decades, 30 years, 40 years, and now it's come back. And attachment, I think, is really important. But it's only one part of character. And character has to do with ways that you survived as a child that become habituated below awareness, and you're using them now in different contexts. Attachment style is one of about 25 different dimensions of character. So I get some concern, like with Susan Johnson's model, where she is fixed on a mono lens about attachment. And I don't want to minimize attachment, but it's not the only show in town. So yes, it certainly would affect how we would deal with people when we're helping them deconstruct and unpack what gets in their way of self-regulation. Because we come from a model, Gestalt therapy, that human beings are self-regulating, and that character interrupts self-regulation. By self-regulation, I don't mean doing whatever the hell you want. I mean doing what fits that situation that you're in. And that character interrupts self-regulation. And therapy's job is to interrupt the interruption, whatever it is. I don't want to characterize it almost diagnostically as attachment styles, avoidant attachment, anxious attachment, etc. But to deal with what is it that makes up that characterological stance of perceiving the world and reacting to the world.
This is not such really a question, but a comment. She said in response to Bob's comment that he's not aware of any other non-fusion model, she raises that the terms fusion and differentiation, the antidote to fusion, were coined by Murray Bowen in the 60s. His family systems theory is an elegant theory that directly addresses fusion. Also, the conflict, distance, deferral patterns that were referred to were articulated by Bowen in 1966 as the nuclear family emotional process. I'm not sure if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, we're aware of the Bowenian perspective and honor it. The problem with, there are several orientations, both theoretical like Murray Bowen or clinical like David Snarch, that focus a lot on the disengagement and the discrimination. And then there are other models that focus on the attachment, how to connect, how to come towards. But they emphasize one to not quite the exclusion, but they certainly privilege one side of the polarity over the other. And it seems important to us to include both the differentiation and the contact. That's the withdrawal and the contact. All of that together creates connection. So Bowen has a seat at the table, absolutely. And so do the attachment theories, like Bowlby, the theorists. But they seem to privilege one end or the other. And maybe that's how theory gets built, by different people emphasize different parts of it, and then the synthesis of bringing them together falls to other people.
Betsy's asking, how might you use experiment to illustrate this model or part of it with a couple?
I'm laughing. About 40 years ago, I had a young couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other in a group. And they were lying around. In those days, we were on pillows on the floor. Can't do that anymore. And they were lying around and they were always with each other. And literally, when one went to the bathroom, the other one went with them. And I asked them about that and they said, oh, we just love it. And I asked if they would do an experiment and they said, sure. So I took his jacket. He was bigger, this is usually the case. And I put his jacket at his left arm and her right arm, and I buttoned it up. And I said, and they loved it. It was cocoonish. They lasted about 45 minutes. And then they started to get a little claustrophobic, a little bit antsy, a little bit, oh, no, stay there. And again, the experiment was that the experience is wonderful and it has a limit threshold where you need something different.
Great.
I think 45 minutes is pretty good.
Yes.
Pretty
I don't think I could last that long in the same
I could
jacket
either.
as everybody.
No.
Get out of me, get away from me.
Right.
Renata's asking, could you give some information on how you work with couples and what is the goal of your approach?
We're interested in process, not content. Content is important to the couple, of course, it's their life, and we deal with the content, but it's in the service of getting to the process, because it's not what the differences are, as we said before, it's how they deal with difference. If I deal with difference by characterizing you as stupid or not considerate or selfish, or what I'm going to get back is defensiveness from you. You're going to try and clear your good name if I characterize you. If I characterize me, you can't argue with me. I need more time with you, rather than you're selfish and you don't consider how much time I need. In the latter, I'll get an argument. In the former, the partner then has to look at, oh, my partner wants more time. Is that something I'm up for or not? But there's nothing to argue with. Unless you're going to call your partner a liar, you don't really want more time. You're only saying that, which is not very feasible, not very, very probable. So the helping people look at how they deal with difference. For example, epilogues and prologues are almost always toxic. When somebody wants to say something to you about what they want, but they start with a prologue. You know, I know you won't want to do this because you never want to do anything for me. You're only thinking about yourself, but would it be too much to ask if you would blah, blah, blah? What do you think you're going to get back? Or an epilogue. Can you please get the box down from the closet? Because I'm sick and tired of doing everything around here and you sit on your ass and do nothing. What do you think you're going to get back from that epilogue? So, I mean, those are just some examples of the way they engage. It's not communication, which is usually kind of manualized. You say I, and so the person comes out and says, I feel that you're a jerk. So they are still characterizing. So we're looking at a more sophisticated level of organization of how are you engaging with this person, not just the exact words you use.
Something I do want to ask you, Bob, is if we look kind of big picture, how would you say the Gestalt connection approach is different from other models of couples therapy?
I think all models of couples therapy are interested in connection, but I don't think they go at it very directly. They go at the difficulties that people have and trying to get rid of difference, because couples therapy models and couples therapists are raised in the same culture where difference is dangerous. You got to get rid of it. So it's not like that they're not for connection, but they don't support things like withdrawal when you need to withdraw, connection and confluence when that's what you need, intimacy when that's what you need. The movement is not supported that brings connection. It's just trying to get rid of the difference because difference creates problems. It's not the difference that creates problems. That may be true in 4 or 5%. It's not what the differences are. It's how the couple deals with difference, with the occasional exception that it's what the difference is about.
I think we really emphasize the idea of the separation part of connection and separation, because I think it's really crucial, and I think most couples therapists don't deal with that. That if you want some space by yourself or alone, it doesn't mean you don't want your partner, which is the information that most people have. Any kind of disconnect means I don't want anything to do with you, which I think is not true. I just may want to do something without you, and that doesn't mean that I don't love you.
Yeah. And that's part of I think the ground of Bowen's work of discriminating and disengaging. And he talks about it largely from family of origin, but it's the same kind of thing with a primary relationship, of being that it's a legitimate thing to withdraw. It's just as legitimate as connecting. It's not a statement that I don't like you.
The second part, going back to Renata's question, Bob, was she was asking, what is the goal of the Gestalt therapy approach to working with couples?
Well, the goal is to help each person self-regulate within their situation, considering the needs of the other so that they can be connected and maintain a self. The simple reality is that the only way you can find out if you're compatible is if you show up. If you posture, then it has a short shelf life. If you posture and play like you're not in order to make it work, then you're in a relationship that only works when you're not there. So we're wanting to help each person in the couple to get clear about who they are and who their partner is. What's a core need that they cannot compromise and be okay? And what is the myriad of other things that they can compromise on and be okay, not be resentful or perennially disappointed, etc. So that our hope, but not our goal, is that the couple will find a overlap of their range, because nobody's compatible the same. Even if they were, each of us is changing by the day, by the decade, etc. But to find out, do we have a range where our core needs are met and nourished? And that's a hope. But the reality is sometimes couples are together when they actually show up as who they really are not compatible. And there may not be anything wrong with either of them. If you get someone who is so insistent that everything be their way, they're not going to be compatible with anybody, then you're talking about their stuff, not that individual stuff, their own characterological way of adapting to the world and demanding that the world adapt to them.
Now, I do want to mention here to everyone watching that if you're getting curious about Bob and Rita's approach, you can actually see them working with real couples. Do you want to speak a little bit about your couples therapy films, Bob, and how they came about and what they are?
Sure. We have two sets of films, two collections. One is individual therapy, 8 films, and the other is couples therapy. They're 2 films, but each of the film has multiple sessions with the same couple. So the first couple there are 2 sessions on there, and in the second film, the same couple, it's a different couple, but this couple has 3 sessions on there. And we're adding the 4th one to the collection. I'm sorry, a 3rd one to the collection very soon. We work with process. One of the films on couples is specifically about dealing with difference. That is the issue of that couple. And they're all available on Vimeo, Vimeo on demand. And
just put the link in the chat for those that want to go there and have a look as well. Vimeo.com/on-demand/Gestalt films is the first one.
Right.
And the other one is vimeo.com/on-demand/Gestalt couples films. But we'll put those links are in the chat. And if you're watching on the Facebook live in our group, we'll also put those in the comments after the webinar. I found them absolutely fascinating, Bob. I bought your couples therapy films, and it's just for me, it's just the best way to learn, just to see you doing the work. It was wonderful to witness. And it's totally authentic, totally real. There's no acting, there's no scripts. These are real couples with real issues.
Absolutely real, no script, no acting, no shills. They're real people, yeah. Yes. And the individuals are the same. They're all real people working on their real issues, and the individual ones are not edited at all. And because the silences and the nose blows are all important to the actual therapy.
Yes.
And we are very happy with the films, and people who watch them are very happy with the films. The hard part is getting people to watch them in the first place. People who teach therapy or teach counseling. I guess there's so much around that they don't want to look. They don't want to take the time most of the time. But we're working on it, making some progress.
Well, tell us about your European residentials, because I believe this year was cancelled because of COVID, but you are planning next year in Lithuania, summer of 2021. Tell us a bit about what's on offer there for those that might be interested in actually working and learning from you in person.
Sure, I can tell you. We have two different programs. One is a couples program that lasts for 6 nights and 5 days. And we do a lot of small group work where people really get an opportunity to work with our model. We do a lot of theory presentations. We have another couple that works with us that is also in charge of doing some of the lower groups. The lower groups are people not necessarily new to couples therapy, but new to our approach to couples therapy. And then we have the second program, which is the Gestalt individual program, where we have many more people. Usually there's about 30 people in the couples program. Plus we bring in actual real couples for people to work with and for us to work with, so that you get to see us working every single day. Everybody gets that if you're interested in seeing that. And in the Gestalt program, individual program, it's more about, we have more like 100 people there. We divide you into smaller groups, about 15 people in a group, maybe less. So you're always with a small group and you get to know those people pretty well. It's 9 working days. Oh, we have 3 3-day modules. And then we have 3 days and then a day off, and 3 days and then a day off, and then 3 days. And then you go home. So you get to work with 3 different trainers, because we don't want you to be clones of the people that you're working with. We want you to have the opportunity to see different people work in different ways, with different issues that come up with people in the group and with each other. You also have an opportunity to work in the larger group and in the smaller group, and we have individual therapy offered. So if you're somebody who's in a lower group and you want individual therapy, you can have a therapist from one of the higher groups. We have 5 levels that go on simultaneously. It's really wonderful. I'm a little prejudiced, but I absolutely think it's great.
And the individual therapy, there's a live supervisor from the faculty or one of the distinguished guests. So there's a live supervisor every day sitting in for the 40-minute session, and then the client leaves, and then there's a supervisory session of 20 minutes with the supervisor and the therapist. And just back to the couples thing, I don't know if it was clear that Rita said we bring in real couples, and Rita and I work with the real couples, and all the work is then deconstructed, and we relate the theory to the work after the work. And the advanced people, meaning people who have some familiarity with our model, they also work with the real couples with us supervising. And the people who aren't that familiar with our model yet, they work with role play couples with live supervision. So it's quite complex and complete.
And in an absolutely beautiful location in Lithuania.
Oh, it's a magnificent 5-star resort. We really lucked out to get this at a price we can afford, because they're changing their marketing from being super high-end to wanting to be more middle of the road. But they still are a 5-star property. They're incredible. So, and we are very proud that we have an 80% return rate. People come back for 5 or 6 years, and 8 out of 10 people come back. People vote with their feet. It's both for the value of the training and the warmth of the international community. We get people from 30 countries every year.
Incredible. Amazing diversity. That must really, the whole event must be colored by that diversity. So many different countries and cultures and languages.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everybody speaks English, but varying degrees of English.
Yes.
So by the time we get home, we cannot speak English properly.
Well, we speak it with a Hungarian syntax. I like very much this workshop.
Someone was asking, they really enjoyed the Resnick's model of coupling. Is there any way they can get a copy of that? Is that available on your website, or can they email you for a copy?
They can certainly email. You mean the circle of relating thing?
Yes, the one that Rita showed today.
Certainly.
Sure. Just email me and I'll be glad to send it to you.
Yes.
We also have an interview in the British Gestalt Journal with Malcolm Parlett, December 2018.
We have an old interview with you, Colin.
Right, on our website with Clinton. But the one in the journal, the Gestalt, British Gestalt Journal, is much more recent. It's 2018. And if anyone's interested, just shoot us an email and we'll be glad to steer you there.
Thank you so much for giving up your time today, Bob and Rita. It's been many years since I have interviewed you online, but it just feels like it was yesterday. And I really appreciate you giving up your time and the energy and the passion you share, particularly because we have many couples therapists here, but not as many Gestalt therapists. So it's just wonderful for you to introduce these new ideas and for all of us to think about couples in new and interesting ways. And I know I'm always open to any new information that can help me in my work with couples as well. And we've had lots of positive feedback from people. Thank you for your comments. People saying thank you for sharing, it was very helpful. Thank you for the presentation. They love the clear explanations, the excellent illustrations and the metaphors to demonstrate. Thank you, Bob and Rita. Lots of comments coming in. And if you want to email Rita, sorry, it is ritaresnick@gatla.org. I'm just going to put that in the chat as well. Some people are asking for that email address, but if they go to your website, Gatla, GATLA.org, they can sign up for your newsletter as well. Is that right, Bob? And stay in touch with you.
Yes, we have a mailing list on gatla.org.
Are you sure? We have it
Positive.
on. Okay.
We do.
And the other where you definitely do have a sign up is your other website, a couple of individuals.com.
We have it there too.
A couple of individuals.com. So I've just put that.
In fact, you can see trailers of several of the films. There are trailers there, and there's also a free theory, a 30-minute theory presentation on Gestalt therapy. That one's not on couples, but it's on Gestalt.
I'm also really enjoying your Instagram page now. A couple of individuals on Instagram, great little snippets of the videos and little inspirational quotes. So check them out on Instagram as well.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for all coming. Really appreciate it. Had a wonderful turnout today. Over 100 people watching you. And thank you, Bob and Rita. Thank you for your generosity. It was a wonderful conversation, and I hope we can speak again sometime soon.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Thank you, Clinton.
Thank you for inviting me.
Bye. See you, everyone.
Ciao.